Hey guys, welcome to the supplemental kind of tutorials for kind of floor plan tools on Revit. So a couple of things that I want to cover today. I want to teach you guys how to line up doors and windows, go through some wall cuts and openings, and how to create additional levels, and also kind of talk about grid lines, especially because we're dealing with a two-story structure. So first, let's get into kind of doors and windows and how to line them up. So if you notice here, when I click on this door, because when you're designing, you're probably popping in doors, whatever, and then you're going to kind of move them into place to kind of finesse them in the future. So when you click on doors, fortunately, dimensions do pop up, so which is great, because then you can say I want that 3 foot, from center to center, right? But on windows, dimensions do not pop up, and I don't know for whatever reason, and so you're going to have to kind of nudge them, or for instance, if I dimension them, it doesn't activate these dimensions. I still have to kind of figure out about how much to push, and sometimes that can get pretty time consuming, where if you know exactly I want that to be 6 foot apart, then you gotta come down, move it kind of closer to 6 feet, and then now you're dealing with, some fractions of an inch and things like that. So that can get super time consuming. But Revit has a simple solution for that, which is activate dimensions, meaning if you click on an object and the dimension stays kind of dead, if you will, it doesn't highlight, there's a little thing up here called activate dimension. If you click that, it'll activate all the dimensions that are associated with that file, with that component. I can simply click that and click 6. Now I'm 6 foot away, edge to edge. So, don't forget that tool. It's there. Activate dimensions, and you definitely want to, when you dimension doors and windows, whether you go to center line, like if I have a dimension string like this. When a contractor sees a dimension like this, it'll drive them pretty batty. It's probably good for you guys to kind of, round that up, whether that's 5'4" or 5'6", just kind of get it close. And obviously you also know the trick where you can center the window to the space. I might do that and then go ahead and delete that after. So, try not to get these fractional dimensions, if at all possible, in your project. I mean, sometimes it's unavoidable, but definitely if you're the architect and you're designing it, you have a choice to nudge this up or down just a little bit so that you get a clean dimension. I mean, 1 or 2 inches should not kill the kind of the visual aesthetics. So avoid dimension like that. So remember, there's a tool here called Activate Dimensions. And here, that could be a clean 7 foot, and ranges, right? So, and then with doors, I'm often asked questions like, where do I place the doors along this wall, right? So, generally speaking, this is called the strike side, and that's called the jam side. So, on the strike side, you want more distance from the wall, because you're presumably standing somewhere here, trying to, reach for the doorknob. So if it was like that, you're going to pinch yourself trying to get in that door, right? So you definitely want your strike side wall to be longer than your jam side. And then, so generally, kind of for me, I like to kind of make sure that the jam is at least between 3 and 6 inches. Because more than likely after they install the door, they're going to want to put a trim around it, and obviously it depends on the design, but trim around doors are anywhere from 1.5 inches to sometimes 4 or 5 inches wide. So leaving about 3 to 6 inches in between that, should be sufficient enough for, if it's a 3-inch, spacing, you're looking at maybe 1.5 inches jam or something like that, or 1.5 inches trim. So oftentimes, doors are tight because you're trying not to make your hallways too large. So, it'll be harder to get more than 6 inches on the hinge side. So that would be my recommendation. Obviously, there's no hard kind of numbers to say, the door should be so many inches away. When you get into commercial jobs, on the strike side, there are some specific dimensions that you have to maintain, because a person in a wheelchair must sit, next to the door before they can open it. So that becomes a different issue. But in residential, it's really a lot of it is just common sense. And then usually when the door opens, that's where your light switches will be, right? You don't want a light switch behind the door. So that's my little tip on lining up windows and doors. And I'm going to jump to our levels here. With this project, we do have a basement level. So to create a new level, you can come up here and then click this and it'll add a new level. That's good. Or you could just click one of these options and copy. CC is a shortcut. And if this is my finished floor, I'm probably going to have some sort of wood underneath the finished floor to hold up the floor. And so I'm going to leave about a foot here and then another 8 feet for the height of the ceiling. So I'm just going to click there, and I'll drop it down 9 feet. So that'll be my new levels. A couple of things that I discovered recently, which is, and I'm sure Callahan has taught you guys this in beginning Revit class, but when the level mark is blue, apparently that means that there's a floor plan associated to it. So I already have a floor plan for the ceiling and floor plan for the first floor, but you can see that the level mark is black. That means there's no view for that yet. There's no view of that particular level. So anyway, I am going to go ahead and rename that to be basement FF. And then now let's create a floor plan view of the basement. So you're going to come here to view, the plan view. It's basement FF that I've just created. And now I have a basement view, right, which is somewhere here. I don't want to see my topo, so I'm going to hide that. And this is where it's kind of, the grid lines and things like that are important, because I want to be able to see, all of these grid lines so that I can line up my walls. Of course, another thing too is for you guys to turn on underlay so that you can see where that's at, so that you can, like for instance, this is my stairwell. So on the basement, clearly I'm going to have a wall that's on top of that, right? So not only should you turn on your underlay so that you can see your first floor, but what you see here right now is one example where you can see I have grid lines here, and right now the numbers are pretty bad, so I'm going to go back and change them. So you have 1, that should be a 2 and 4, or maybe you want to start the 1 from the bottom. That doesn't matter, obviously you just want them consistent. And then I'm going to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So I'm going to first click this guy, and A, oops, A. So you want to go back and make sure you change these things so that they have right conventional things. Then this is going to be 2, 4. So I'm going to change this to a 4 first, because it won't let you name it the same. Oh, I have a 4 up because I have it here. So I'm gonna, just change that to a 44 for now. And there are other plugins that'll help you renumber, but for now I want to try to stay everything Revit out of the box. So that one's gonna be. So you definitely want to make sure that you are lining up your grids, because these grids are going to help you line up stuff on the multiple levels that you have going. Here, I might as well change that. So when I get to my basement level, you can see I have my floor, but I don't see my grid line. And typically when you're working on a project and you're adding levels and taking off levels, this will happen. So what you want to do is you want to go to your elevation view. And you can see my grid lines that are numeric. They stop at the first floor, finished floor. And that's why it's not showing on the basement finished level. If I had another level somewhere here, because my grid line is crossing that level, it'll show it. So what I want to do is I want to click these, and I want to move my grid lines below, like that. So then if I go to my basement, it'll show me my numerical grid lines, which is good. Now it's not showing me my alphabetical grid lines, so I'm going to go to the opposite view. Instead of east, I'll go to my north, zoom in here, and you can see these grid lines are not crossing my basement level. So I bring that down to cross, and then when I get to my basement, you'll see those levels show up. And I should be looking at it in a quarter-inch scale. And if these grid lines are too close, let's say you have another grid line, for instance, I'm going to make a copy of a grid line and slip it right in here. And if they're too close, you guys can click this little break mark, which kind of brings it off to the side. I'm going to undo that. So that's how you set up your grid lines, and obviously renaming grids. I'm just going to go up to the first floor here and teach you a couple of other tips, which is, let me see, wall cut opening. So let's say you want this wall to continue down this way, you know, to have a little top, but then you want to put it in a little arched opening here, or you know, or maybe you want a square opening. So that's called a wall opening, and be careful not to use door and window openings. So I'm going to show you what not to do first, which is if you go to component and you load a family and you come down to Imperial, and then you go to this opening, which is right here, and then you might want to pick a door opening, for instance. You do not want to do that, because although that looks great, this will show up on your door tags, because that is a door. I don't have a door tag at the moment, but so instead of you having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 doors, you're going to see this 9th door, because this is a door opening, right? And so you do not want to use that tool when you want to have just a regular opening. You can do a couple of things. First of all, when you come down to the architectural tab, you can click on wall openings, for instance. So you click that, and then you create a wall, and then you create where you want to open that wall from there to there, and then it'll just create an opening. This is different from having a wall and then having another wall like that. Although in plan they look the same, but you can see in 3D. I'm going to rotate around. It's the difference between having a break in the wall versus actually creating a wall opening. You get this little header and a couple of other soffits, which is nice. So you definitely want to utilize this tool, wall opening tool. There are other wall opening tools, which is load family. So if you're going to use an opening tool, just like the wall opening tool, you can use this, which then you can, you know, it's really an opening like a window, if you will, but it's just really an opening. And then you can bring the bottom down and all of that stuff. So, but I find the wall opening tool much easier to use. But if you wanted, let's say, you know, a kind of a arch opening, obviously you can customize your opening type, but out of the box Revit, you have this. So I'll show you how that works. So you could go to passageway elliptical and pop in that. So you get this kind of an opening tool, which you can also edit. You can elevate it, you know, so and so high, because that went from my basement. Never mind. But either way, so you could adjust the spring offset, which is the arc. So if I put a bigger offset, that'll give me a more of a rounded arc. And you know, so yeah, so that's a really nifty tool if you guys are inclined to using that. And those are the two types of openings that I would recommend. So I would not do like separation of walls, because on the floor plan it may look fine, but when you look at it in elevation or 3D, you'll see that these are actually two separate walls, where this is an opening within a longer wall type. All right, so today we learned how to adjust windows by using the Activate Dimension, you know, wall opening tool, and then creating new levels and adjusting, you know, grid lines. And make sure that you are using the grid lines and line them up in areas where you want to make sure the walls are going to stack up on multiple levels. All right, guys, we'll see you guys in the next demo.